Jessica, when you're ready. Well, good morning and welcome to GLAAACC in the AM, your morning connection for news, technical assistance, and resources. My name is Naomi Scott, and I am the Director of Operations here with GLAAACC. And GLAAACC is dedicated to the growth and development of Black-owned businesses, and we seek to educate, equip, employ, and empower our members. Today, we are here to learn about LA County's Measure A and its comprehensive approach to tackling homelessness. I would like to take a moment to thank today's partners for bringing this information before all of you, Unite LA, California Community Foundation, and the Angelino Project. Before we do go any further, I want to give you all the opportunity. I encourage you to put your information, your contact information in the chat box for a segment of virtual networking. This will also be the same place that you do put any of your questions that you have today. So everyone, if you go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. I also like to introduce our GLAAACC staff. Today, we have Jessica O. Davis, who is our special events coordinator, and she is the lead on today's program. Our president, Angela Gibson-Shaw, and programs director, Chanel Frampton, were unable to join us today, but that completes our staff, and so you get a chance to know all of us. Our agenda for today will consist of presentations, Q&A, some upcoming events, and so let's go ahead and get started. So our first speaker today is Sarah Dussault, a policymaker, advocate, and problem solver whose innovative approach to addressing local policy issues has helped bring results to the Los Angeles region over the last 2 decades. Sarah recently served on Mayor Bass's transition team and played a key role on the declaration of emergency and executive directives. As part of her efforts on reform, she served as a co-chair on the LA County Blue Ribbon Commission on Homelessness and is working to implement governance reform that shapes our collective response with urgency. She served on the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority Commission, the joint city-county agency that coordinates housing and services for homeless individuals and families in the Los Angeles County. As commission chair from 2019 to 2020, Sarah helped lead COVID relief efforts such as the implementation of the Project Room Key, providing emergency housing to more than 8,000 individuals in Los Angeles County. She is committed to policymaking that addresses issues unique to women experiencing homelessness and to bold investments in crisis response to homelessness. Her passionate advocacy and pragmatic approach to the issue is guided by her personal experience with her brother who suffers from schizophrenia and her experience and his experience with frequent homelessness. She's a member for the Los Angeles Business Council and a board member of the Los Angeles LGBT Center. She serves on the advisory board for Heart Forward to bring access to mental health care to Metro LA. Sarah holds a BA in political science from Yale College and a JD from UCLA. She's an avid supporter of the arts. She is married to Chris Dussault, a key member of the legal team in Hollingsworth versus Perry, the case that successfully challenged and overturned California's Proposition 8 before the U.S. Supreme Court. They also have two teenage sons, and I'd like to welcome you today, Ms. Dussault. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that really sweet introduction. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. I hope this is going to be a useful hour for all of you. We are excited to talk to you about Measure A. Measure A is a resident written measure. A lot of us actually worked on some of the language in this ballot measure. And then we worked hard to gather 400,000 signatures from Los Angeles County residents in order to qualify the measure for the ballot. This is actually the first measure on this issue of housing and homelessness that has actually qualified for the Los Angeles County ballot with voter signatures. Any past measure or other measures that are being put on the ballot are put on by government. And this was actually driven by experts, by neighbors, by folks in the community. So we really wanted to implement change, just to be frank. You're going to hear in a minute from Senator Murray, but our hope is that Measure A delivers change that it enables safer and cleaner streets, and increases housing affordability, and it really implements lessons learned from the past, and it's funding what we hope is a new approach. It repeals and replaces Measure H. Measure H was put on the ballot in 2017 by the Board of Supervisors, and that is a 1/4-cent countywide sales tax that expires in 2027. And this would repeal Measure H, replace it with a 1/2-cent sales tax that would be countywide. The goal is transparency and results. Underperforming programs will lose funding. There's a significant increase in accountability metrics to deliver results. And there's actually written into the measure specific goals around oversight. And this is the first time that this has ever been done on this issue. So reducing the number of people falling into homelessness, increasing people permanently leaving homelessness, increasing people moving out of encampments, increasing housing affordability, and increasing access to mental illness and substance abuse services. Without the replacement of the Measure H funds, we will be looking at the potential for a 25-28% increase in homelessness, because currently Measure H funds supports for about 30,000 people a year in a variety of places. And again, Senator Murray, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. The other thing that Measure H implements is a change in the overall governance structure to lift up accountability. So for the first time ever, we have in place something that's called the executive table, where elected officials serve directly in oversight. 2 members from the Board of Supervisors, 2 members from the City of Los Angeles, and then 4 members from smaller cities throughout the county. So this finally gives a voice to some of the smaller cities in the county in direct oversight. In addition, there's a leadership table, and that leadership table advises the executive table on oversight, and the leadership table includes business representative, representative from labor, representatives from service providers, representatives from a variety of communities in order to bolster oversight. So with all of this work, our goal is to really drive and build on some of the momentum that we've been able to achieve. You may know that for the first time ever, homelessness decreased in the count this last year. We were able to achieve a 10% decrease in street homelessness. And the goal is that how do we build on that and build on the reforms and best practices that we've really started on? So with that, I'm going to stop, because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions. But I'm really excited about Measure A. I think it's a huge opportunity for our communities. And I just want to make sure we're reaching as many people as possible. I mean, just to be frank, we're not a battleground state. So a lot of the resources that sort of tell people to vote or talk about elections are not spent in our state. And we want to make sure we're reaching every community, talking about what's on the ballot and making sure people are well informed. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm not sure if Naomi, you pass it off to the next person, or if I do. So I'll pass it back to you.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for that information. I will go ahead and open it up for questions before we go to the next presenter. Do we have any questions for Sarah on the information that she shared? All right, I don't see any hands raised. So I will go ahead and introduce our next speaker, retired Senator Kevin Murray, President and CEO of the Weingart Center Association. And he is serving in this position since 2011. Murray was elected to the California State Assembly in 1994, representing the 47th District, which included Culver City and Los Angeles. In 1998, he was elected to represent the 26th Senate District, adding the communities of Hancock Park, Hollywood, and Silver Lake to his representation. Retired in 2006 due to term limit. Well, that's reading 16, must be 16, no? To term limits. Murray sits on the corporate boards of Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, California American Water, and Hawaii American Water. He serves on the board of the Central City Association and is also a member of the California State Bar, the LA World Affairs Council, and the Pacific Council on International Relations. Senator Murray holds a Juris Doctorate from Loyola Law School, a master's degree in business administration from Loyola Marymount, and a bachelor's degree of science and degree business administration and accounting from Cal State University Northridge. He's also a California licensed real estate broker. Welcome. Please join us.
Thanks for that intro. I forgot I did most of that stuff. Your research is really good. Thank you for having me this morning. I, of course, have been a longtime admirer and supporter of GLAAACC. And this measure comes down to two things. Sarah sort of gave you, all of the details of it, but it really comes down to two things. This money is going to help our homeless population. And for GLAAACC's purposes, you only really need to know one thing. 70 to 80% of the people who are on the street now are African American, and this money goes to help house them. That is the most important thing. That's the no-brainer kind of concept that an organization like GLAAACC should take into account. And then the second thing is that somewhere around half of this money goes to build stuff. And it goes to build buildings and build infrastructure. And those of your members who are in that business, who are in supportive or back office industries, more money to building infrastructure necessarily helps the Greater Los Angeles African American Chamber of Commerce. And those are, frankly, the only 2 points that are important. And for those reasons, I would urge you and all of your members to support this measure. And that's it. Other than questions, that you just two things should convince everybody on this call to support this measure.
This is why I love appearing with Senator Murray. He makes everything crystal clear.
Okay,
it's ADHD has driven me to this, according to my wife.
So then I will open the floor for questions. Are there any questions that anyone has? I do see, yes, Denise, go ahead. You're on mute.
I was talking. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited.
You were amazingly eloquent while you were muted.
Wasn't I? Oh,
that's always my approach anyway.
It's all good. It's all good. This is an exciting measure. I've been reading about it and I've been wanting to be a part of it forever, because one of the things that I'm intrigued about the homelessness population is the mental health part of it. And I'm not seeing a lot of that being addressed. I know that homelessness, you need to house people. And my business, I'm a landscape architect. So I'm really interested in food insecurity and actually having food gardens be a part of the build out for these housed new housing developments that are coming in place for the homeless population. So twofold, I wanted to know about the mental health aspect of this measure, how much is actually being put into that, and then the build outs, is it just putting them in cubicles, or is it just actually creating community, right?
So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Sarah, I'm gonna respond 3 ways. A, call me about your landscape architecture business.
Okay.
Somebody there will have my contact information. But secondly, so some significant portion of the money goes to build permanent facilities. So one of the things this particular mayor has gone after, as opposed to sticking people in temporary shelters, we are creating what we are calling permanent interim housing. So we're not just putting them in cubicles. If you if any of you are downtown and drive down 6th Street, at 6th and San Pedro, you will see we've just built a 19-story tower of permanent supportive housing for homeless people. And we have one going up across the street. Probably can Google map it too for those of you who are technically savvy. But one of the things, you know, when I was in the legislature, my main focus was transportation for some of you transportation heads that might be on the call. And one of the things that is a buzzword in transportation is you need to be multimodal. So you need to have planes and trains and automobiles and bike lanes and, you know, light rail. You need to have all of it, and ports, and you need to move people and goods. So the same thing in the homeless population. So you've got people that got to homelessness for various different reasons, and they all require different solutions. So there is, you know, for instance, we operate some places that you would call a shelter where people are in. We don't operate anything where it's just a cot in a big room, but we operate some relatively nice places. Sarah helped us open one in Hollywood at the Gardner Library, which, by the way, if you're ever on Gardner between Sunset and Fountain, there's a very beautiful mid-century modern library that we converted into housing for homeless. And so we have some places where there are what you'd call cubicles, but most of the trend now has been to give people some sense of security and privacy. So we now have lots of rooms that have their own bathrooms, and we're moving through that. So it is certainly more than just a cubicle or a cot in a big room these days. And the second thing is all of the money that comes through GLAAACC and will come from this measure will come with services. So you won't just get housed and fed. You will get a case manager who helps you manage through life. You will get referrals to a mental health professional or a behavioral health professional, or sometimes that'll be offered on site. So the short answer to your question is yes, all of this comes with some robust services to try and help get people, you know, back on track. Because the idea is not to warehouse people. The idea is, as much as possible, to get them back to, you know, being contributing members of society. But we have recognized that we can't do this temporarily and on an emergency declaration forever. That's why this is an ongoing revenue stream, which covers what we're calling, you know, permanent types of housing, either permanent supportive housing or permanent interim housing. And, you know, this mayor in particular, and I assume many of you are supporters of hers, has recognized that this is a long-term problem that requires long-term investment.
Okay,
hopefully
great.
I wasn't too long-winded.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate that answer.
I would also love your contact info, and I'll have Naomi give me that, because we really are trying to add the beds that you're describing, whether it's, you know, growing beds or just integrated into the landscape. Everything that Senator Murray was describing, there is a requirement of open space. There's a requirement of adding, you know, the pet areas and other, I mean, some of the work Senator Murray's doing is just absolutely incredible. If you go see any of his projects, it's just amazing. But all of those things are being incorporated. But one of the organizations that I work with specifically, and in my intro, you know, I spend a lot of time with people who are experiencing severe mental illness, is with this organization called Heart Forward. And I'd love to tell you more about it. And we are hopeful with the new funding that's coming from the state under Prop 1 to add facilities for people experiencing mental health issues. But the reality is we still need this local source to create that flexible funding for the types of things you're raising, to be able to create community.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then Senator Murray, I don't know if you see in the chat, but Mr. Vasquez, I don't want to mispronounce him, Vasquez Amjak, it has asked, is the 70 to 80% of homelessness in LA nationwide and what role does discrimination play. I would say discrimination has played a significant role in Los Angeles. A huge issue is the way land use policy is really embedded in discrimination. And quite honestly, the federal government, how they were distributing housing funds up until just a few decades ago was really embedded in discrimination. So the way funds were used ever to really help fight discrimination. And that's this is the aftermath that we're really seeing. So again, that some of the reform that we've been able to put into Measure A is really around how are we going to lift up and serve communities that have suffered from discrimination for hundreds of years. Our land use policies in LA, and were some of the worst, and we've got to really work to remedy that.
And this is I'm not sure where they are nationally. I think it is certainly higher than the rest of the population nationally, but it sort of depends upon what the demographic of those cities are. But in LA, all of you who have been around LA, going back to the crack epidemic of the 80s and the war on drugs and the idea that foster kids, the overwhelming majority of them end up homeless after they've aged out of the foster care system. The lack of families staying together in Los Angeles because of all of those discriminatory things, redlining, all of those things have played a role in it. So discrimination is certainly a significant part of it, coupled with land use and redlining and all sorts of things, which I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar with. And by the way, the rest of that population is Latino or Latinx.
So the question that a lot of people have had is the argument that this is a forever tax, and where does it end? What's the point? You're just taking all this money forever. What would you say to the opposition and them opposing this measure? What would your response be?
I would say yes, absolutely, and this is a forever problem. So I hope no one is under the illusion that we're just going to spend some money and magically wave a wand and there will be no homelessness. There are people falling into homeless for various reasons. You could call it rent control, you could call it mental health, you could call it fentanyl. There will always be a problem which generates some homelessness. And so this is a forever tax because it's a forever problem. And one of the things, and by the way, all the years I spent in the legislature, the only reason you put a sunset on something is because you don't have the votes to kill it now, and you think you might have the votes to kill it in the future. So my answer is yes, absolutely it is, and that's what we want it to be. I think Sarah said in the beginning of our talk that we have put in some measures for control and accountability and transparency, which people thought were lacking in the past. But yes, absolutely, this is a forever thing.
I have a question speaking about the accountability and oversight. I know that that's been something that's been raised as concerns, but I know that it's going to be a little different with Measure A. So a question I have is, what is the opportunity for community members or business community members to be involved in sort of providing some of the input on how oversight works, or how long-term this could be administered successfully throughout the county?
You want to talk about GLAAACC specifically, Sarah?
Sure. I mean, right now on GLAAACC, there is a business seat open. And I know that, various folks, including the chair and vice chair, are taking recommendations. So the current chair of GLAAACC is Rex Richardson. The vice chair is Miguel Santana, the CEO of CCF. And I'm happy to take recommendations. We worked hard to make sure that there was a seat for business, both on GLAAACC and on the homeless services oversight, so specifically on the leadership table. The person on the leadership table, I'm honestly having a brain freeze on his name, but is a wonderful gentleman who I think is a member of GLAAACC as well as a member of LABC. But I will certainly get that to the team so they can give that out. And the goal there is to create ongoing representation. But then both of these entities are public entities. We have public meetings, and we're looking for feedback from the community. So our hope is that we've created paths of engagement through GLAAACC and through other organizations so that the business community stays engaged and involved. I mean, as the answer to the last question, is Senator Murray was saying it's forever a tax because it's a forever problem. But again, we really want to, pull folks in consistently to be a part of the implementation. And Denise is mentioning in the chat, is the Veterans Association also involved? Yes, there's a seat for veterans on the leadership table. And they're as well as a part of GLAAACC. So we've really solved for what was a challenge in the past of not including voices from different communities at the table in order to help with oversight and decision making.
Right. I do see another question in the chat. It says, with 34 days left till election, what can be done to get this message to everyday people? Who is leading the charge of this effort?
So there's several groups leading the charge. Again, this is, community driven. So it's a little different than campaigns in the past where it's, the government putting a ballot measure on. So there's a very large coalition. There's a large community driven coalition that's funded through C3 efforts. And I think Unite LA could talk a little bit more about that. There's a coalition of different groups involved in the campaign itself, where we're raising money to get ads up, both digital ads as well as mailers. Hopefully you've either seen a digital ad or you've seen something in the mail. And if you haven't, you will soon, because ballots are getting out this week. But we're working to do earned media events to really get, local press more educated and involved. As I said, we're not in a battleground state, so we don't have the flooding of resources communicating to voters as much as in other places, but we're certainly trying to make up for that with every resource that we have.
One thing that can be done is for GLAAACC, if they do this, to officially endorse the measure. I think that would be very important in sending a message to audiences, certain audience, both business people and African Americans. I think GLAAACC holds a lot of sway with people. And so we would love to have an official endorsement by GLAAACC.
I'll take that action item to our leadership and see what we can do.
But the other thing is, I know GLAAACC, all your members are active people. Just tell your friends this is something they should be for. Tell your neighbors. Tell your, as politically active people or active people in general, I'm sure all your friends and relatives ask you, what to do when the ballot comes around. And so answer, hey, you should vote for this.
And as a follow-up to Luisa's question, who is leading this charge? How can our community get involved in this 34 days? When you say, sharing that, is there anyone to even follow on social media that they can, continue to share what you've been speaking about? Are there any, we know Unite LA has, Instagram. Is there any other outlets that we can take on our social media to kind of push this? Because that really is the best place to disseminate it to the most people the quickest. where should they be going to find this info to continue this conversation with their community, especially digitally?
I just put in the chat, so angelinoproject.org has a pretty vibrant website and digital presence, and I would highly recommend looking there for any content you want to share, distribute. MeasureA.org also is useful. And then I included boldnewway.com. So any of those sites, I'd say the most active digital presence is Angelino Project. But I think that's really, a good source of information. Pam has also asked, how is this funded? Is it property taxes? This is not a property tax measure. And to be honest, our coalition really worked to make sure it wasn't a property tax measure, because there are quite a few folks who are, feeling the strain of property taxes. This is a sales tax measure. It repeals and replaces Measure H. So right now, most people in the County of Los Angeles pay a 1/4 cent sales tax. Now, this is not on necessary goods and services. So I'm sure you are aware that the state legislature has exempted a lot of things from sales tax. So this doesn't cover EBT purchases. This does not cover gas. It doesn't add to your gas tax. It doesn't add to certain kinds of sales tax. It does not. There's no sales taxes on services. But this is a repeal of the Measure H 1/4 cent tax and replaces it with a 1/4 cent sales tax countywide. In the past, some cities paid into Measure H, some didn't. This actually makes it uniform. So all cities will have the same 1/2 cent sales tax instead of, and all cities will then be a part of contributing and helping us solve the homeless and housing crisis. That's one of the reforms that is part of this measure. So I hope that was explain that piece.
I just have one more question related to that. Is you talked about solving the housing crisis. Is that also for general housing, or is it just specifically for the homelessness situation?
This is about homelessness.
Okay.
Right, Sarah? There might be some some overlap, but this is mostly about homelessness.
It is, but there's some, GLAAACC and some of the housing funding will have a range of affordability. So it can go all the way up to 120% of area median income. So that's folks, that's teachers, that's a variety of folks in the community. So it's not, the goal is to really focus on homelessness, but at the same time, there are many benefits to overall affordability that should come out of this measure.
Well, and if you build any housing, you sort of take the pressure off the housing market, not take it off, but certainly reduce it. So, if you build housing at the very lowest end of the spectrum, you broaden the market so that the folks just above that are just a little less competitive in terms of getting housing. So it will have an impact on affordable housing in general, but that impact will flow through, the ultra affordable, lowest socioeconomic folks.
Go ahead and have Jasmine, and then Kelly will go ahead and address your question as well.
Thanks, Naomi. This question either for Sarah or Kevin to address, but Unite LA, as a champion of equitable workforce and education in the region, really appreciates Measure A's focus on preventative measures as well. So we know youth is a huge part of the homelessness crisis. Over 6,000 youth under the age of 18 and 2,500 between the ages of 18 and 24-year-olds. On the streets of Los Angeles. So would love to hear from either one of you some of the preventative components that are worked into the strategies by GLAAACC and Measure A to address some of the challenges that our youth are facing.
Sarah, why don't you take that one first on the...
Sure. So Measure A for the first time ever has specific funding requirements for prevention and looking at a variety of populations, youth, and then I would also lift up seniors on fixed income. So there's funding in Measure A specifically for rent subsidies, for tenant support, for a variety of, we hope, innovative measures to keep people housed. It's in the past, you know, quite honestly, Measure H had no specific funding for prevention, and we were not really as focused on prevention as we should be. There's been research done that if we spent 50 million on prevention, we're saving 200 million on the back end of other kinds of services. So we're really looking to spend more on prevention through this measure.
And it's a very good point, the last point that Sarah made, because, you know, I've been doing this for a while now, and currently, I was going to say in previous, but currently, you know, sometimes because of the long list, you know, some of you are familiar with the list to get on Section 8 and the various lists that you have to go through. By the time someone goes through that, they become a high acuity person with bigger, broader problems. And sometimes you can help somebody with a little bit to save yourself having to spend lots more on them later on. And we've been ignoring those people until they languish on the streets and get other kinds of comorbidities to go with whatever got them to homelessness in the beginning. So I think that's a very good point. And thank you so much for asking that question, Jasmine. That's a very important part of our approach to addressing these problems.
Kelly, did you still have a question?
Oh, and I think we owe Luisa an answer to his question on the Latinx outreach. Sarah, you're on the campaign part of it, so.
Yeah, well, I would say 100% right. I mean, quite honestly, we just did a survey and 45% of Latinx replied that they hadn't been contacted about the election at all. And so we're seeking to remedy that. We have a Spanish-speaking commercial and other commercials directed at the Latinx community going up this week.
But I also think, Luis, if there are specific groups that you're connected to that you want to have outreach to, we would, you know, I would welcome any suggestions that you have to make sure that they're followed up with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Totally, Luis. Sarah and I will take our show on the road.
Yes, for sure.
So you tell us where to go and we're there.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for the questions and the discussion. It really has been informative and encouraging to know what to do next. And so we will continue if you have any questions. We'll take a brief moment and share some of GLAAACC's remaining upcoming events for the year. We've officially entered the fourth quarter. I think that's really crazy as 2024 is coming to an end, and, you know, the countdown to Election Day and different things. And so GLAAACC has a few more exciting opportunities to put in front of our members and the community. And so we'd like to share those with you now. And then please let us know if you do have any additional questions when we come back. So I'll bring my colleague Jessica O'Davis up to share some of our upcoming events.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Correct screen. I'm not sure if you guys can see my PowerPoint.
We can see it. It's just not in presentation mode, I don't think.
Well, I'm going to hold it there. It keeps picking back when I try and put it in presentation. But we do have our GLAAACC and the AMs. This is one of our GLAAACC and the AMs. And these are technical and informational events that we like to do over Zoom. It's really helpful to be able to share with businesses and, you know, busy, you know, small businesses are on the go. And so our next one is actually going to be GLAAACC and the AM presents How to Do Business with CWA. So if you're looking to do business with CWA, that is October 15th from 2 p.m. to 3:30. We generally do these in the morning, but this is an afternoon one, so take note of the time. And if you're wanting to get involved or find other GLAAACC events coming up, you can, you know, scan this QR code and join us for any of our events, or you can can find that information at GLAAACC.org, GL3A's2C's.org. And if you're not a member, please join us, become a member, share this with, anyone that you meet out, and let them know that we are here for them, that we are, campaigning for them and their business and helping them, do more business. So we appreciate your time and thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you for that. We do also have an opportunity for our members to present themselves. Another member meetup has been added to the calendar. They've become a hot ticket. So we'll get a chance to share some of this information again as a reminder. Member meetup will take place at the end of this month. We added it for October 26th. And so those who have an opportunity to join us on Zoom just like this for an intimate conversation to meet fellow members of the chamber, as well as share upcoming things that are taking place in the community, in the city. So for our members on the line, for those who are joining as guests, we invite you to join us for October 26th as well. That information will be added to our calendar by the end of today's presentation. And so if there aren't any other questions, we may have an opportunity, any announcements for anyone else, anything else going on that we should know about. We will go ahead and call the program to close and give people a little bit, donate some time back for today. I definitely want to thank Jasmine with Unite LA for bringing this information to us, the topic, our speakers, and Sarah and Kevin, and really just having a really great conversation with us, making us feel comfortable with the information. And thank you for joining us on this Tuesday morning. If you are not a member of GLAAACC, we ask you to, take a minute and take a look at our website, join events like this, ask us any questions you may have. We look forward to seeing you at the next upcoming GLAAACC event. Thank you for joining us for today's GLAAACC in the AM on Understanding Measure A. You all have a great rest of your day and a beautiful week. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.